Just came in. I'm speaking with Professor Anthony Browder. Professor Browder is a very well respected historian, Egyptologist, educational consultant. He also has written some books. I recommend you guys go take a look and I remember the importance on this platform of us pushing you to support the things you believe in. Some of the books, I'll name a few, and maybe Dr. Browder can let me know if there's any books he wants you to know about. But the ones that I have in front of me are from the Browder File, 22 essays on the African American experience. I see from the Browder File, survival strategies for Africans in America, 13 steps to freedom. I love that. I see Avatar, a historical and cultural analysis, Nile Valley contributions to civilization. I see Africa on my mind, my first trip to Africa, just so much there. And so I want to ask you this, Dr. Browder. Everybody, please hit the thumbs up button. Also, please share this. We got to share the knowledge, push the message out there so everybody can hear it. So please take a moment. Don't just watch. Just use your fingers, hit thumbs up, shares, all that stuff so that the algorithm will push the message out. So, Dr. Browder, why do you think I see one of your books is called My First Trip to Africa. Can you articulate why you believe, I assume you believe this, that it's important for all of us as African Americans to make a trip back to the motherland?
All right, well, boys, I don't believe that, because a belief is something you accept without proof. I know that travel back to the motherland is the best investment one can make in themselves and their family members. So my first trip to Africa was written 30 years ago by my daughter and I. It documents the trip that she made to Africa with me in 1989, when she was 7 years old. 1989 was when I wrote and published my first book, From the Browder File. So after she returned from her first trip to Egypt, 13 days in Egypt, we decided to sit down and have her write her first book. So writing that first book for my daughter, who was 8 years old at the time that book was published, was an extended homework assignment. And so she wrote the book from the perspective of a 7-year-old talking about her experiences to Africa, talking about her first trip to Africa. So it documents what she saw, why she went there, and why was it so important for her to begin to travel to Africa to understand who she was as a person of African descent. So as I said, that book is 30 years old. We're in the process of revising that book now. We did another book with my daughter when she was 12 years old that documented her second trip to Africa. It's called Africa on My Mind. And on that second trip, we went to Ghana, Senegal, Gambia, and the Ivory Coast. We went to the west coast of Africa. We visited the various slave dungeons so that we can document and I can help my daughter understand how we got here, so that she can understand the whole process of enslavement. And so these books are a byproduct of my assuming parental responsibility for my daughter, my most prized possession, my greatest investment. I've been a single parent since my daughter was 4 years old. And so I'm not going to allow a system, bless you, brother, I'm not going to allow a system that is vested in mentally and culturally disinvesting us. I'm not going to allow that system to teach my daughter who she is as a person of African ancestry. So I took her to Africa so that she can see for herself why Africa is important and why she, as a female of African descent, has an obligation and a responsibility to know who she is so that she can determine her quality of life based on her standing on the shoulders of her ancestors. So my daughter's been to Egypt, I think, 13 times, been to Africa probably a total of 20 times. And as you mentioned at the start of this program, we have been excavating two 25th Dynasty tombs, two 2,700-year-old tombs. We've been doing this work together, the two of us, for the past decade. We are the first father-daughter African-American archaeological team in history. She holds the distinction of being the first African-American in the burial chamber of Karakamin, this priest whose tomb we're excavating. So the idea was to work with my daughter to write and publish books about her experiences in Africa so that other children can learn about Africa through the eyes of one of their contemporaries. So her first book, as I said, is 30 years old. We are revising it now. Our books are being used in classrooms throughout the United States, the Caribbean, and Africa. And, it's a beautiful thing to be able to control your destiny and tell your story so that we can model for other people of African ancestry what we can do when we focus our attention on being the best human beings possible.